In my recent Hellboy video, I made light of Martin Scorsese and Francis Ford Coppola's comments on Marvel. Well, it could be worse. At least it's not a Marvel movie. Martin Scorsese says, "I don't see them. I tried, but that's not cinema." This led people to defend them in the comments. To me, I didn't take much stock in the comments from these directors. After all, Scorsese said they aren't even cinema, which is definitely untrue. Cinema is essentially just a movie, so saying Marvel movies aren't cinema is like saying water isn't wet. It is that, by definition. And Coppola's comments that they're despicable is clearly just his opinion and not really worth giving too much thought over. But perhaps that is my mistake. Perhaps we should analyze this more closely and look at what they clearly mean rather than what they are saying. Is the Marvel Cinematic Universe art? So before we can get anywhere here, we have to ask ourselves one simple question. What is love? No, that's not right. What is art? That's it. What is art? Just the raw dictionary definition gives us the expression or application of human creative skill and imagination, typically in visual forms such as painting or sculpture, producing works to be appreciated primarily for their beauty or emotional power. A common thing people are throwing around is that Disney, as a major studio, does not produce art, frequently citing the string of live-action remakes and Marvel movies, essentially producer or studio-driven movies. And to make the argument that Disney doesn't make art can seem very convincing when you watch some of their entries.
Name's Sputnik. Can I hitch a ride home with you guys?
For shizzle, dog.
This is my last chance to go home to my boy Sasha.
We're lost in space, dog.
Movies like this, the live-action Disney remakes, and the sometimes formulaic Marvel movies can make a fairly compelling case for these movies not being art. But then, what are we saying? Is something like Guardians of the Galaxy not considered art?
No, Groot! You can't. You'll die. Why are you doing this? Why?
We are Groot.
Yet something more director-driven, like The Room, is...
What client?
I cannot tell you, it's confidential.
Oh, come on, why not?
No, I can't. Anyway, how is your sex life?
Part of the problem is the backlash Marvel has gotten, not for necessarily being bad per se, but for being too big and too influential. Avengers Endgame made over $2.5 billion to become the biggest movie of all time. Every studio out there is looking at Disney and wanting to do everything they can to bring in even a fraction of their numbers. That is why every studio is desperate to have their own cinematic universe. You could blame the Marvel Cinematic Universe for shit shows like Tom Cruise's Mummy movie or Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice.
It's Cherry.
Movies are vastly more concerned about setting up big cinematic universes than they are about being any sort of standalone movie. But that is also the same as blaming Star Wars for space mutiny.
Well, anyway, got that out of my system.
Kevin Feige really built something with Marvel, and it's not his fault that everyone else is failing at his job. That being said, there is still the idea that these are corporate movies. Can corporate movies have any artistic value? Again, not a clear answer. When something like Marvel was building up and Disney was just getting started with Star Wars movies, there was a real sense of wonder. Could they pull it off? Now, multi-billion dollars later, they feel like old hat and just the same thing on repeat. So, is it possible for Disney, or any studio, to produce art? After all, they aren't making movies for love of the craft. They are making movies for money. But then we also have movies like Schindler's List, The Matrix, The Silence of the Lambs, even movies by Coppola and Scorsese, like The Godfather and Goodfellas. Are these movies not art because a major studio backed them? I guarantee you they didn't back the movies because they thought it had artistic merit. They backed them because they thought it would make them money. So perhaps it's not so simple. After all, the movies I listed have a very strong director's voice behind them. So maybe it has less to do with the production house or distributor and more to do with the director. Then we have James Gunn's Guardians of the Galaxy movies, Taika Waititi's Thor Ragnarok, the Russo brothers with their Captain America and Avengers films, Ryan Coogler with Creed and Black Panther, Joss Whedon with the first two Avengers, even Zack Snyder with Man of Steel and Batman v Superman, the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogies. These are movies where the director's voices are very prevalent. They are also movies made by major studios. You also have directors like Eli Roth and Michael Bay. Many would agree these directors have made some very questionable movies.
I am directly below. Enemy scrotum.
However, they also make movies with a very clear director's voice present. That's the thing. All movies in one way or another are art. They may not be good art or art in your taste, but they are all very much art. There's an expression. Art is subjective. This is not to say that the existence of art is subjective, but rather that every piece of art hits everyone in a different way. What moves everyone is different. Many people dislike Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, yet Lindsay Ellis made a very powerful video essay about how much it moved her.
I went into Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 a bit skeptical. I was not expecting...
I know I have to go.
So movies like The Room, Birdemic, Shock and Terror, Troll 2, Battlefield Earth, the Emoji Movie, the films of Neil Breen are all art. Very bad art, trash is a fitting word, but still, art. Just like how The Shawshank Redemption, The Dark Knight, The Lord of the Rings, Pulp Fiction, the Mission Impossible movies, the Fast and Furious franchise, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and even those soulless live-action Disney remakes, they are all art, just to different degrees. To put this in sports terms, everyone who plays baseball can be considered a baseball player, just not everyone is Babe Ruth. So when Scorsese says Marvel isn't cinema, he's objectively wrong. And when he implies that Marvel isn't art, he is again objectively wrong. What he probably simply means is that it's not his taste, which is a completely reasonable position to have.
Yeah, well, that's just like, your opinion, man.
Everyone is allowed their opinion. James Gunn perhaps responded to Scorsese and Coppola the best. Many of our grandfathers thought all gangster movies were the same, often calling them despicable. Some of our great-grandfathers thought the same of Westerns and believed that the films of John Ford, Sam Peckinpah, and Sergio Leone were all exactly the same. I remember a great-uncle to whom I was raving about Star Wars. He responded by saying, "I saw that when it was called 2001, and boy, was it boring." Superheroes are simply today's gangsters, cowboys, outer space adventurers. Some superhero films are awful. Some are beautiful, like westerns and gangster movies, and before that, just movies. Not everyone will appreciate them, even some geniuses. And that's okay. It's important to remember what is thought of as art is constantly changing. It wasn't incredibly long ago when movies weren't considered art. Remember back a mere 9 years ago when Roger Ebert wrote a whole editorial about how video games will never be art? The fact is, both these mediums are art, and it's important to recognize them as art. After all, if you're willing to say not everything in a certain medium is art, then you also have to look at an activity like book burning and say, it's fine as long as you only burn certain books. And that's absolutely untrue.
What does the diary tell you that it doesn't tell us?
Tells me that goose-stepping morons like yourself should try reading books instead of burning them.
They think order and chaos are somehow opposites and try to control what won't.
Pain don't hurt.